Her name was Rachel Brenner, a 31-year-old marketing coordinator living in Asheville, North Carolina. She lived alone in a modest but warm third-floor apartment nestled between coffee shops and craft boutiques. Rachel was known for her quiet demeanor and sharp sense of humor, often heard offering dry remarks during morning meetings that cut through the Monday fog. Her colleagues liked her. Her neighbors barely knew her. Her family, who lived just a few hours away, checked in weekly. Rachel had been single for almost 2 years following a difficult breakup. Her best friend, Claire, had finally convinced her to try dating again. Just one evening, Claire had insisted. What's the worst that could happen? She had set Rachel up on a blind date with a man named Ethan, someone she knew through her fiancé's law firm. He's kind, smart, stable, normal. That's all you asked for. Rachel hesitated but eventually agreed. That Friday night, she dressed carefully, pulling on a navy blue dress she hadn't worn in years and slipping her grandmother's delicate silver bracelet around her wrist. It was a family heirloom, a thin band with tiny sapphire inlays. She texted Claire a picture of herself in the mirror and joked, "If I get murdered, at least I'll look great in the headlines." She left her apartment at 6:42 p.m. Her phone pinged as she texted Claire one final time, "He's here. Wish me luck." Rachel never came home. The next morning, Claire assumed Rachel was sleeping in or maybe had even spent the night with Ethan. A rare spark, perhaps. But as the afternoon stretched on and texts went unanswered, Claire's stomach twisted. By that evening, she was calling Rachel's phone obsessively. No answer. Straight to voicemail. At 9:12 p.m., Claire called the police. They arrived at Rachel's apartment. Nothing was disturbed. Her bed was made, keys still missing, her cat pacing nervously. A small note was still on her fridge. Saturday, brunch with Claire at 11. The police checked with area hospitals, shelters, and holding cells. Nothing. By Sunday, a missing persons report was filed. Rachel's family drove in from Charlotte, hearts in their throats. A week later, flyers were taped on poles and bulletin boards across Asheville. She had vanished without a trace. Her phone last pinged a cell tower on the west side of town, near South Market Street, close to where she'd reportedly met her date. Police pulled CCTV footage from nearby businesses. A single grainy clip showed her walking beside a tall man in a dark jacket. Her bracelet caught the light briefly as she waved at someone off-screen. That was the last confirmed sighting of Rachel Brenner. The man she was with, Ethan Carr, was questioned. He claimed they had drinks at the Lantern Bar, then parted ways around 9 p.m. His story was consistent, and surveillance from the bar corroborated most of it. He looked calm, even remorseful when speaking to officers. "I barely knew her," he said, rubbing his forehead. "But she was lovely, really." He agreed to a polygraph. He passed. No evidence tied him to her disappearance. The case went public. Local media ran her story for weeks. Online sleuths speculated wildly. Some blamed Ethan. Others thought she had staged her own vanishing. But those who knew Rachel were certain she wouldn't have left without saying something. Not to her family. Not to Claire. 3 months after she vanished, the searches dwindled. The leads dried up. Her case joined hundreds of others across the country. A name, a photo, and a void where answers should be. But Rachel's family refused to let her fade. They kept her photo pinned to their fridge. They lit candles every year on the anniversary of her disappearance. And Claire never deleted that last message. "He's here. Wish me luck." 8 years later, it would be that bracelet, her grandmother's bracelet, that finally reopened everything. And what it revealed was darker than anyone imagined. 8 years is a long time to hold on to hope. But Claire never let go. She moved on in the ways people are expected to, got married, had a child, changed careers, but Rachel's disappearance was a quiet current underneath everything. A photo of the two of them remained tucked inside her wallet, and once a month, she revisited a private folder on her laptop filled with scanned articles, Reddit threads, and old police updates. She had grown cautious with her obsession. Even her husband only knew fragments. Then came the catalog. It was a Sunday morning. Claire was sipping coffee in the kitchen, flipping through a jewelry catalog that had come tucked inside a lifestyle magazine. She rarely looked at these things anymore, but a page caught her eye. A small silver bracelet with sapphires. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't just similar. It was the same. The placement of the stones, the slight bend in the clasp, the tiny scratch near the edge. She zoomed in, heart pounding. Rachel's bracelet. The one she wore that night. The one the police had listed as a personal item, not recovered. Claire called the company, a boutique called Heirloom Revival, specializing in vintage and estate pieces. She played it cool, pretending to be a buyer interested in that specific bracelet. "Where did you acquire it?" she asked. The receptionist hesitated. "I'd have to check the inventory log." An hour later, Claire received a callback. The bracelet had been purchased in bulk during a storage unit auction in rural Tennessee, about 4 hours west of Asheville. The lot had included assorted jewelry, clothing, and old electronics. Claire asked, begged really for more details. The manager agreed to email the full invoice. As she opened the PDF that evening, something else jumped out. Among the listed items was a black clutch purse, marked with a faded monogram, RB. Claire's vision blurred. It wasn't just the bracelet. The unit had belonged to someone who had Rachel's things. She called the Asheville police the next morning. A tired-sounding officer took her statement and forwarded it to the cold case division. Claire didn't wait. She drove straight to the shop that weekend, dragging her husband and daughter along. The bracelet was already gone, sold 2 weeks prior to a collector in Florida, but the manager let her inspect the remaining items. Claire identified 2 more, a silver compact and a lipstick shade Rachel always wore. That was enough. The police reopened the case, this time with new energy. Detective Monica Reeves, now assigned to the cold case unit, took over. A seasoned investigator with a reputation for thoroughness, she met Claire in person. "If even half of what you're saying holds," she said, "we've got something." The trail led them to Wellington Storage, the Tennessee facility where the unit had been auctioned off. Records showed it had been abandoned 5 years earlier. The last tenant listed was Daniel Colt, a name that didn't appear in any prior connection to Rachel. Payment had stopped abruptly. The unit remained untouched for years until the auction. The facility owner described Daniel Colt as quiet, strange, paid in cash, and guessed he was mid-40s. Security footage from that time was long erased. But something else surfaced, a copy of the rental application. The listed phone number was dead. The address was a cabin outside Hartwell, a remote area not far from the Georgia border. Detective Reeves contacted the local sheriff's office, who agreed to assist. Within a week, a team arrived at the property, a crumbling structure tucked deep into the woods. No one answered the door. No signs of recent life. But on the side of the house, under a decaying tarp, they found something buried in the leaves. A rotting suitcase, Inside, women's clothing mostly unremarkable. But tucked in one of the inside compartments, wrapped in a moldy towel, was Rachel's driver's license. That was when the tone of the investigation shifted. No longer a missing person case. Now it was a possible homicide. They obtained a warrant. The cabin's interior was eerie. Most of the furniture was gone, as if someone had been preparing to leave or had already fled long ago. But one room remained untouched. In the back corner of a closet, behind a loose panel, the forensic team discovered a sealed plastic bin. Its contents chilled even the most experienced officers. A pair of high heels with bloodstains on the inner lining. A phone charger. Hair ties. Notes with names and times. At the bottom, wrapped in a faded scarf, was a disposable camera, still undeveloped. The disposable camera became the investigation's turning point. Detective Monica Reeves had seen her share of evidence, but as she held the old Fujifilm camera in gloved hands, something told her this was more than a forgotten relic. It was carefully placed, protected, hidden. The camera wasn't just an object left behind. It felt like a message. She sent it to the state lab with an urgent processing request. The film inside was degraded, but intact. They managed to extract 22 images. What they revealed sent shockwaves through the task force. The first several photos were innocuous. Blurred shots of a wooded area, the edge of a cabin porch, a dusty pickup truck. Then came a picture of Rachel. She was alive, clearly distressed. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy from crying. She sat on a mattress on the floor, wearing the same dress she'd last been seen in, the black one from the blind date. In the corner of the frame, a man's shadow. The next photo showed her holding up a newspaper. The date was 2 days after she vanished. Then came more images. Rachel eating alone at a small table. Rachel sleeping under a heavy quilt. Rachel sitting by a boarded-up window, sunlight streaking through the gaps. One image was particularly haunting. She was looking straight at the camera, face expressionless, but her eyes were full of something between fear and exhaustion. Then the photos changed. The final few images were no longer of Rachel. They showed another woman, brunette, slightly older, with a scar along her collarbone. Same setting, same mattress, same boarded window. One frame caught her trying to run, blurry, mid-motion. Another showed her passed out on the floor. The last photo was of the man. Half of his face was visible in a reflection, caught in a mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. He had short graying hair, deep lines around his mouth. He wore a flannel shirt, and his hand was reaching for something just out of frame. When Reeves shared the images with Claire, her knees nearly buckled. "That's her," she whispered, tracing her finger over Rachel's shoulder in one photo. They now had proof Rachel had been alive after her disappearance. But more than that, they had a face. Partial, yes, but clear enough to run facial recognition. The results came back in less than 48 hours. A possible match. Dennis Holbrook, a man with a history of violent offenses in the 1990s. Most of them sealed or dismissed after plea deals. He had lived under various aliases across the Southeast, mostly working odd jobs. Trucking, construction. In 2010, he'd been charged in Kentucky with unlawful restraint, but the victim recanted. He hadn't been heard from in nearly 9 years. But then a hit. A pawn shop in Alabama had uploaded surveillance footage a month earlier. Routine police check for stolen goods. In the video, a man matching Holbrook's appearance was seen pawning a silver bracelet and several rings. Claire saw it and knew instantly. That was Rachel's bracelet. The timestamp was just 2 weeks before the Heirloom Revival catalog had been printed. He was still out there, still pawning Rachel's things. Detective Reeves issued a statewide bolo and contacted the FBI. They agreed to open a joint task force under missing persons and potential serial abduction cases. Holbrook's last known address was traced to an RV park near Tallahassee. Agents arrived to find the trailer recently abandoned. Inside, traces of bleach, a burned mattress, and a folder full of old newspaper clippings. Articles about missing women dating back nearly 2 decades. Rachel's case was one of them. So were the others. In the back of the trailer, hidden under a loose floorboard, they discovered several small jewelry boxes. Each one was labeled with initials, RB, LT. The FBI suspected at least 5 more victims, but they still had no idea what had ultimately happened to Rachel. No body, no confirmed sighting beyond those photographs. And yet, the story was spreading fast. National coverage, podcasts, crime forums ablaze with theories. Was she killed? Sold? Did she escape? Was she still alive? The most chilling question wasn't where she'd gone. It was how long she had been kept. Then one day Claire received a letter. No return address, no stamp, just placed in her mailbox. Inside, a single photograph. Rachel standing in front of a motel door. Her hair was longer. She was thinner. She looked older, but she was smiling. On the back of the photo, written in shaky handwriting, "I'm okay. Don't look anymore." Claire dropped the letter and wept. The photograph changed everything. For weeks, law enforcement had been chasing a ghost, relying on old footage, pawn shop records, and the fading hope that Rachel Meyers was still alive. But now, here was evidence. A recent image, a direct message. She was not only alive, she was watching. But from where? The photo had no metadata, no fingerprints. The motel door behind her was generic. Beige paint, a faded brass number partially obscured by her head. No clear signage, no clues about the region. Claire clung to the photo like it was oxygen. She'd memorized every detail. Rachel's slightly turned ankle, the way her hands were folded in front of her, the fraying of her sleeve. A part of her wanted to believe the message. "I'm okay. Don't look anymore." But she couldn't stop. Not now. Neither could Detective Monica Reeves. The FBI, now fully engaged, formed a dedicated unit around the case. They called it Operation Monarch. Holbrook was the prime suspect, but without a body, they still couldn't prove he had done anything criminal to Rachel. The photographs from the disposable camera were damning, but not definitive. He could claim she stayed willingly. The manhunt intensified. They searched through months of hotel and motel check-ins across multiple states, comparing faces with partial surveillance footage. In Biloxi, Mississippi, a desk clerk remembered a man and a quiet woman staying in a room for several weeks. "She never talked much," the clerk said. "He paid in cash." Another tip came from a used bookstore in Louisiana. A customer matching Holbrook's description had come in, asking for books about cold cases. They were closing in. And then a break. In northern Georgia, an abandoned cabin was discovered by hikers near the Chattahoochee National Forest. Authorities were alerted due to the disturbing interior. A mattress on the floor, food wrappers, hairbrushes, and dozens of photographs pinned to the wall. Not just of Rachel, but of at least 4 other women. One of them had been missing since 2008. A trapdoor in the floor revealed a crawl space. Empty, but the walls were marked with scratch lines. And on one beam, written in faded red ink, 7 years. He lies. Confirmed the worst. Rachel and others had been held there, but Holbrook was gone. He seemed to stay one step ahead of every lead, abandoning places days or hours before agents arrived. It was as if he knew where they were going before they did. Agent Julie Sanderson, a profiler assigned to Operation Monarch, proposed a new theory. "He's not moving randomly," she said. "He's following a pattern, one tied to her. The moment she was spotted in that pawn catalog, he changed his rhythm. She's not with him anymore, and he's spiraling." They began searching for anomalies. Crimes, fires, break-ins, anything strange in areas Holbrook had previously lived. In Huntsville, Alabama, a pawn shop was set ablaze in the middle of the night. The fire was contained, but inside, investigators found something horrifying. A box of photographs, burned around the edges. Rachel featured in most, but in the center of the box was a new photo. Rachel with a bruised face holding a slip of paper. It read, "You took everything, so now I disappear." It wasn't clear who the message was for. Holbrook? The public? Claire? The FBI feared she had tried to run, but was caught. Or worse, that Holbrook had taken revenge for her escape. A few days later, a rental car was found deep in the Appalachian foothills. Inside, nothing but a torn page from a Bible and the initials RM, etched in the dust on the windshield. Claire started sleeping with the lights on again. But then, a tip came from an unlikely source. A retired postal worker in North Carolina, sorting old photos for a yard sale, recognized Rachel from the news. He claimed she had stopped by his daughter's roadside coffee stand several weeks ago. Quiet, tired, bought a bottle of water and asked if there was a bathroom. She was real polite, he said, but she had this look in her eyes, like a deer that's already been shot and knows it. The stand had no cameras, no car license plate, but it was hope. Reeves returned to the theory Sanderson proposed, that Rachel had escaped, but Holbrook couldn't let her go. He was hunting her now, but she had a head start. The team began cross-referencing sightings, building a path of Rachel's possible movements. They noticed she avoided big cities, used cash only, and never stayed long in one place. The trail led them to a small motel outside Asheville. The owner recognized Rachel from a photo. "She stayed here 3 nights, he said. Seemed scared. Left early. Paid in 20s. Reeves checked the room herself. In the nightstand drawer, hidden beneath a torn telephone book, she found a single silver earring, a match to the one Rachel wore the night she disappeared. But no Rachel, and no Holbrook, only silence and the growing fear that time was running out. The days blurred. Operation Monarch had exhausted every lead. The sightings, the photos, the cryptic messages. Each breadcrumb had led them deeper into the maze Rachel Meyers had once called her life. But now, with the earring in hand and no fresh trace, Claire Krause felt the growing weight of helplessness pressing down. Until the call came. A man in Lexington, Kentucky, claimed a woman had collapsed outside his antique shop after trying to sell a small box of jewelry. She didn't have ID, refused hospital care, and left behind the box when she ran. The shopkeeper, curious, opened it. Inside was a bracelet, a cracked compact mirror, and, buried beneath old tissue, Rachel's wedding ring. The store owner called the number printed on a flyer pinned to a corkboard in the local grocery store. "If you see her," it read, "please call. Reeves, Claire, and 2 field agents arrived the next morning. The box was real. The ring was real. And taped to the bottom was a folded napkin from a roadside diner, with one word scrawled in smeared blue ink: Salem. There were dozens of Salems in the country, but only one sat between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the remnants of the Appalachian Trail, a place small enough to hide, close enough to Rachel's last known path. They began combing the area. Agents split into teams, canvassing diners, motels, shelters. 3 days in, a nurse from a local free clinic recognized her. She came in once, the nurse said. Used the name Maggie. Wouldn't give a last name. Said she'd hurt her ribs falling downstairs. The nurse had tried to press further, but Rachel shut down. I just need painkillers and I'll be gone, she'd said. Please don't ask. She never came back. But the nurse remembered one thing: a blue sedan idling across the street the entire time Rachel was inside. The plate led to a rental agency in Roanoke. The driver? Rented under a fake name. But the security footage didn't lie. It was Holbrook. He was trailing her. Still, Rachel, unknowingly or maybe knowingly, was playing a game of survival with a man who wouldn't let go. They finally found her on a rainy Thursday. An officer spotted a woman fitting Rachel's description at a food bank on the outskirts of Salem. She bolted when approached, but she didn't get far. Exhausted, soaked, limping, she collapsed behind the building. And for the first time in nearly a decade, Rachel Meyers looked up into the eyes of someone who was safe. Claire recognized her instantly. Dirty, thinner, with eyes hollowed by fear. But it was her. Rachel was taken into protective custody. She didn't speak for 2 days. Then she asked to see Claire. I don't know what to say, Rachel whispered, wrapped in a hospital blanket. I kept trying to leave, but every time I did, he'd find me. Holbrook had held her in different places, cabins, rented homes, even an old RV for almost a year. He never beat her, but he controlled her every movement, tracked her, threatened to kill her family if she ran. She had tried several times, but the fear always pulled her back. Until last year. He started slipping, she said. Got paranoid. Talked to himself. I think he believed I'd stopped trying. So I waited. One night, I left while he was sleeping. Since then, she'd lived off-grid, doing odd jobs, never staying in one place too long. But she kept the wedding ring. Not for him. For herself. It was the only piece of me I still had. She'd gone to pawn it weeks ago when she ran out of money. But seeing it under glass broke her. That's when I knew I wasn't gone yet. I still wanted to be found. Rachel helped the FBI piece together locations and patterns. Took another 4 weeks, but they finally caught Holbrook in rural Tennessee, trying to buy burner phones with fake IDs. He didn't resist. He just looked at the officers and said, "She'll come back. She always does." He was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, identity fraud, and more. But the trial took over a year. Rachel testified. When asked by the prosecutor if she feared Holbrook, she said, "I used to, but not anymore. He doesn't own my story." Claire sat in the front row, tears in her eyes. Rachel's life would never be the same. The trauma didn't vanish with his arrest. But she started going to therapy, moved in with a cousin out west, and eventually began working with a nonprofit that helped women escape coercive relationships. 8 years after her disappearance, the headline finally changed. Rachel Meyers found alive. Ex-husband faces justice. And in her own words, when asked how she survived all those years, Rachel said, I kept a piece of myself. That ring wasn't about the marriage. It was about remembering who I was before he took everything else. I waited for someone to find me, and I'm so glad they did.